Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Tempe. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today we have John Danaher joining us. John is the former president of medical and veterinary education at Adtalem Global Education, was president of education and global clinical solutions at Elsevier, and worked with me at Kaplan and served as president of the Schools of Health Sciences and Nursing at Kaplan University, which is now Purdue Global. As you might expect, the theme of today's show is healthcare education. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Andy. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun talking to you today. I'm particularly interested in exploring the world of healthcare education because you work in it, and our son Brandon is also in the medical field and is a medical educator. So I'm really keenly interested in what you have to say, John. Before we get started, we ask all of our guests this question. Please tell our listeners your story.
Sure. Andy, I think the most, the driver that got me onto the course that I pursued was time that I spent in Washington, D.C. after I had done my residency in medicine and was a board certified internist. And what I did was I did something called a White House Fellowship. And I worked for the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who at that time was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Louis Sullivan. And what that experience illuminated for me is that Dr. Sullivan and I were very knowledgeable about the healthcare aspect of healthcare delivery. But we knew very little to nothing, to be quite frank, about the financing, the underwriting of healthcare. And so that experience working, at the time it was called HCFA, now it's called CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, that experience, and there were other agencies, the NIH, the FDA, et cetera, the CDC, it really opened my eyes that healthcare is a tremendously big business. And to really understand it and to be engaged in shaping the dialogue, you had to know more than just about healthcare delivery. You had to understand the economics and finance that underpin healthcare. So that was that time in Washington, D.C. as a White House fellow was the thing that was most seminal for influencing my career.
So Is that your rocket booster moment, or are there other things that you can look back to in your career, especially as an educator, and go, wow, that was really pivotal for me?
Yeah, it was, let me put it this way. It was the first true rocket booster for me. And the reason it was a gentleman from Stanford Business School, a professor there, came into Washington, D.C. to talk with the secretary to talk about healthcare reform. And his name is Professor Alan Enthoven. And so I went up to him after he talked about managed care and managed competition, all these things that were shaping the healthcare delivery system. And I went up to him and I said, Professor Enthoven, I'm going back to Stanford. And, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that you have to really understand economics and finance. And so he put me under his wing and he said, you're just the type of person I'm looking for, physicians who are interested in these aspects. And he said, come to Stanford Business School, and I just started a fellowship, et cetera. So why it was truly a rocket booster for me is it not only set a trajectory for me, a direction for me, but it also provided me a mentor. And I can't say enough about the value of a mentor, who not only looks after you during a certain period of your career, but really longitudinally is there for you to always, check your bearings. So that was the first real one. And again, we can talk more about other ones, but that's the one that put me on the trajectory that really has defined my career and my life.
Yeah, we'll definitely explore the mentorship angle later in the show. But let's start with balancing acts. That's the name of the show, so we should talk about a balancing act or two. In the world of medical education, what's the most important balancing act that the leader of a medical education institution has to play?
Yeah, Andy, it differs. It differs. And so when you work for the head of, when you are the head of a not-for-profit academic institution, what really, the concern, because you tend to, for example, there's 160 not-for-profit medical schools in the U.S., or approximately 160. You get the pick of the litter, and you get to choose the cream of the crop. So you're less concerned about academic outcomes. Usually, everyone passes the USMLE Part 1 and passes the subsequent Part 2, Part 3, et cetera. What you're really focused on when you're running a not-for-profit medical school or nursing school, et cetera, are the amount of grants that are coming in, the placement. You can say how silly some of these ranking, U.S. News and World, et cetera, but still they very much define excellence. In our society, and so as a leader of a not-for-profit educational institution, what you're really focused on is, by and large, getting those grants in, often research-oriented, and ensuring that you're in whatever area you are, be it research or be it primary care, that you've distinguished yourself and established yourself as a leader in that area. With for-profit, and again, Andy, as you said, you and I worked at Kaplan together. There's much more of a need to focus on the academic outcomes, and also, quite frankly, the financials. The financials are more of an everyday thing that you are aware of. And so let's just talk about the academic outcomes. When you and I were at Kaplan, we very much sought to serve non-traditional students. And those were students who had lots of other things going on in their life, and they didn't necessarily have the benefits that other students who were fortunate enough to go to and pay high tuitions, et cetera, had. They didn't have all those benefits. And so the inevitable thing that happens is they come less prepared. And so with both for-profit nursing and for-profit medical or veterinary, et cetera, if you're the leader of that organization, you really do have to look very, very closely at the academic outcomes. Because just by the nature of who you're serving, the NAVLE scores for veterinary medicine, or the NCLEX scores for nursing, or the USMLE for medical schools, it's not a given that you're going to get outstanding results. So how much you spend and the overall performance, financial performance of the school is very much of a top of the mind consideration. You're not interested in how much research dollars you attract is not a focus for-profit schools. So I think that's the dichotomy. I think that's the dichotomy between leading a not-for-profit organization versus a for-profit educational institution.
Right. So, John, you and I have talked in the past about the challenges that we face in the United States regarding shortages in nursing and physician talent. The pandemic, coupled with demographic shifts, you and I are aging baby boomers. Those things have only served to exacerbate the challenges in filling the pipeline. From your perspective, how do we increase accessibility to careers in healthcare and grow the pipeline of new nurses and doctors?
Andy, it's a $64,000 question. It's a $64,000 question. And a couple of things, who oversees who's the governor, the organizations that are the governor of growth in terms of the schools and how big classes can be and how many starts they can have, et cetera, is various accrediting bodies. And, for medical schools, it's LCME, the Licensing Commission on Medical Education. For veterinary schools, it's the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association. And NCLEX, has both state boards. Nursing schools rather have state boards and other accrediting bodies. What happens is those accrediting bodies have a dual charge, and that is they've got to ensure the quality of the organizations that they represent, but they also, quite frankly, at least in my opinion, are also looking out for, various factors of what it means to be a doctor, what it means to be a nurse, et cetera. And some of those factors, quite frankly, are economic. And so the easy answer to your question is, well, we need more schools, we need more starts, we need, et cetera. And that, right now, Andy, for example, there's only 33 AVMA accredited vet schools in the U.S. There's only 33. And it's a huge shortage. There's only approximately 100,000 veterinarians to serve roughly 100 million domesticated dogs, 100 million domesticated cats, et cetera. So there's, in my opinion, a significant shortage of providers. The big thing, so it's really the solution, in my opinion, is we've got to, number one, attract at the high school level, and really introduce what a fabulous career path, being a doctor, being a nurse, being a veterinarian, being at a number of allied health professions. So we've got to really introduce at the high school level, how outstanding these professions are, but also the career path. How do you get there? And if you think about it, you and I, just getting back to that point about mentors, you and I were blessed. And I, in conversations you and I have had over the years, you've mentioned to me some of your mentors. And again, I mentioned one of mine. Those students in high school, particularly if they're coming from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or more atypical backgrounds, they don't have the benefit of having a father or a cousin or an uncle, whatever, who are doctors or financial planners, et cetera. So they really don't know what the path is.
Right.
So I think we've got to do a much, much better job of reaching back into, at a very formative state, these potential applicants. And then I think once, we do have to address the supply and demand imbalance. Just to say a couple of things, just to give you the state of Florida, for example, I did an interview with some folks from the state of Florida a number of years ago. By 2025, they're projecting a shortage of 55,000 physicians in the state of Florida. And the reality, which I think we all appreciate and realize, it's not a shortage of doctors on the most affluent areas, on Brickell Avenue or whatever. It's in the underserved areas. Right. It's really the underserved areas. So I say it to you because we do have to, increase the supply, and we also have to make sure that we're reaching and introducing early on what a terrific career health professions are.
Yeah. As a follow-up, and I think we're going in this direction, how do we improve the diversity of the physician workforce? It's still far too male, white, et cetera. How do we get more diversity in the field?
Yeah. Again, Andy, I think it does. There's really three things that I will posit for us today. The first one is a lot of the criteria which we decide who goes on to become a physician or something, or a nurse or whatever, a lot of those criteria and those selection criteria are outdated and outmoded. And what I'm getting at is, the big weeder out course is organic chemistry. If you do well in organic chemistry, then they ordain you that you can be a physician. And if you don't do well, you fundamentally end your career.
Right.
And so there's a number of those courses, organic chemistry, physics, et cetera, that in one way discriminate toward those who are better prepared, that are better prepared to go on and do well in those courses, et cetera. So I think the admissions criteria is a big place. The prereqs is what I'm trying to articulate. The prereqs is a big thing for us to look at. The second thing is that, again, I do believe that introducing and providing opportunities early on to populations that don't have those mentors, really don't have the career paths. And so there's it's a variation of, for lack of a better word, kind of career days or almost job fairs, where you're going and you're introducing and then you're providing resources to help those young people who don't have the mentors, who can't turn to their mother or father and say, what do I need to do to get into medical school or nursing school? Right. So I think we've got to provide the resources, and the exposure is the second part to it. And then the third thing is, I really do believe that, as we've said, role models are keenly important. Role models, mentors, et cetera. So I think we have to make a concerted effort to really showcase, for lack of a better word, the diversity of the people who are currently operating. And again, I think what we said is it's not diverse enough, but clearly there are. I have a wonderful friend, and he is the chief of trauma surgery at the University of Chicago. And there could be, in my opinion, no greater role model, for someone to aspire to. And he was born in St. Croix and made his way to the U.S., et cetera. But so I think taking individuals who do come from diverse backgrounds, who early on didn't have all the privileges, and found a way, and really showing them and using them as icons of what can be achieved, and the fact that the path is definitely obtainable. So I'll stop there. I think it's the prereq requirements. It's really introducing and providing the support and resources, and then the third thing is showcasing the success stories. Yeah.
Well, thanks, John. We're going to take a really short break for a little commercial on a book that I wrote called The Balanced Business, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Andy Temte. Over the past 35 years, I've learned a lot about business leadership, and I'd like to share those lessons with you. Ask yourself, how do I create an effective, sustainable management operating system? How do I design smooth workflows to better serve the customer? How do I balance organizational trust with accountability? The Balanced Business describes the practical, step-by-step process you need to answer these questions. Order your copy today wherever books are sold. And we're back with John Danaher talking about the world of medical education. John, I've been thinking a lot lately about the role of mentorship in the world of healthcare, and there seems to be a distinct difference between the role that mentorship plays in the world of physicians and physician education and the nursing community. And what, talking to my son and others in the profession, mentoring seems to be much more prevalent for physicians. What advice do you have for nursing leaders to improve mentorship in the nursing profession, to improve retention, career progression, and success for the average nurse?
Yeah. So, Andy, it's a crucial question you raise. And let me put forth what I believe is the reason for what you've just described. When a medical student finishes medical school, there's pretty much universal consensus that they're not, regardless of how good they are, they're not ready to hit the ground running. And so what they do is they go through a period of residency. And residency, be it 3 years, be it 4 years, be it 5 years if it's surgery, or even longer, is a period, for all intents and purposes, in which the young physicians are to be mentored. It's a period that they're to be mentored. That's the goal of it, so that they can be shaped, that they can be trained, and can, for lack of a better word, be job ready at the end of their residencies. And as you said, it's a period during which there's frequent interactions with an attending. Okay, there's frequent oversight, there's frequent interactions with attending. Now, let's compare that and contrast that with nursing. When nurses finish up, when they finish up a ADN, associate's degree of nursing, they finish up a BSN, etc., they go right to work. They go right to work. And what happens is, years ago, they used to quote that it takes 6 months and $65,000 to get a new graduate, regardless of whether they come from the University of Pennsylvania or University of Washington or Purdue Global, that it takes that long to get them to be job ready. In point of fact, now it's longer and it costs more. It's longer and it costs more. And then, Andy, to add to that, of new hires, of new nursing graduate hires, their attrition rate, a year in is about 1/3. It's about 33%. So 1 out of 3 are not working at the institution that they started at. And I think it's directly related to your point. It's directly related to your point in that, part of mentorship is developing that relationship with individuals in the organization, that you have confidence will not only help bring you along in terms of skills, but will also be looking out for your career, be looking to see where you can advance, etc. What I think the issue is, quite frankly, and you and I were talking before the show, I happened to be the recipient of an inpatient stay recently. What I think the issue is that, exacerbated by COVID, by a number of things, by the stress of the job, etc., there's huge turnover going on in nursing, and there's not the demands and the supply of new nurses and the supply of nurses is so acute that there's really in the model is such, is that nurses are expected to be job ready on day one.
Right.
They're expected to be job ready on day one. And what happens, again, as somebody who just went through the process and was an inpatient, they're not. Just the way physicians wouldn't be ready day one, nurses are not ready day one. But they don't have the luxury of that 3, 4 year, 5 year residency to hone their skills. And so what happens to them, what happens to new graduates, is that what they have to learn, and I'm going to just share with you and your audience what I think is an interesting observation. It's very compressed. What they have to learn is very compressed, and they have to deploy those skills and learnings very early on. And I think that leads to burnout. I think it leads to uncertainty. It leads to a whole bunch of things that result in the problems that we confront in the profession of nursing. One quick thing. Here's the part I wanted to share with you. When I was at Elsevier, we looked to address that issue of the high turnover rate and the attrition that was occurring, and the fact that it took a long time to get nurses on board. So we did a survey, and we asked the chief nursing officers of numerous hospitals of all sizes, big academic medical centers and small community hospitals, et cetera. What came back, which was a real eye opener for us, and I had thought, well, where these new nurses don't have is they don't have the skills. They don't have the skills, the cognitive skills of being able to dress a wound or be able to do, put in IVs or whatever. I thought it was purely a cognitive skills. And what to a CNO, to a chief nursing officer across the board, what actually came back was a need for the non-cognitive skills, and to be able to do things like time management, to be able to do things, working on a diverse team, to be able to convey to a family that their loved one has passed or whatever. And so what we did was we built a suite of training that was more targeted to those non-cognitive things that the CNOs were looking for. Now, the point of not only making that an interesting observation, but those are often the skills that a mentor or a role model would teach you if they had time and they were designated to do that, et cetera. How do you communicate with a family that their loved one has just passed? So I'll stop there. I think it's fundamentally the way we've set up the system that we expect nurses to be job ready on day one. Like any new graduate, they're not. And we really haven't put into place a process, the mentoring, the role models, et cetera. And I think a lot of it's got to do with the incredible need and demand for nurses that we just got to, we got to get them to the front line as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I think it's that, we talk about the shortage of nurses and doctors, and it seems to be really kind of two different things going on. On the nursing side, it's a turnover. It's really a turnover issue. If you're able to solve that attrition issue with stronger mentorship, with more onboarding and kind of grace, if you will, in the educational process to pull folks through those first 6 months, year and a half of their tenure, through mentorship, through guidance, through more education. That would be a big help on the nursing side. And then on the physician side, certainly the choke point, as I view, one of them as I view it, is, as you've said, is just the sheer number of institutions, the number of places that are for residency options that are out there. So that seems to be one of the real choke points on the physician side. We kind of paint, if I sit here as a non-medical professional and I listen to the popular press, it's kind of painted, the shortage is kind of painted roughly the same way between the two parts of the profession. But talking to you, it seems like mentorship and guidance could really be a strong solution on the nursing side of the equation. So thanks for that, John.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So, John, as we wrap things up, 2 lightning round questions for you. Lightning round question number 1. I'm giving you access to a time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of John Danaher. What's the message, and what previous version of yourself do you choose to send it to?
No, it's a wonderful question, and it causes me to think. I think I would take it, quite frankly, right back to when my first job out of business school was to be the assistant to the president of one of the Harvard hospital teaching hospitals. And so I would take the message back to the start. And I think what the message is that it's very easy. I don't think apropos of the title of your podcast, I don't think I did a great job of balancing things. I don't think I did a great job of balancing things. And when I say things, I think what I tended to do, and still to this day tend to do, is to over-index on work. I tend to over-index on work, and when you think about all the burnout, be it in nurses or be it in physicians, a lot of it is that this new generation is looking for more of a balance. And I think that, just quite frankly, being a bit of a dinosaur, I think I viewed, that balance as a weakness or a lack of commitment, et cetera. And I think that they probably have it more right than I've had it. And so I think that the guidance I would give my young self would be to strive for more balance in terms of mental, spiritual, physical health than I perhaps did. And so I'll stop there. I think that's probably, if I could use that time machine to go back and give myself a message, that would be it.
Yeah. Well, again, listening to the stories that my son, our son Brandon tells about his experience, there are a lot of physicians who are nearing the end of their career who need to get in that time machine and go back and tell an earlier version of themselves to kind of get over themselves, because it's, we're trying to make significant change in terms of that work-life balance, especially for physicians, also nurses. And the quote unquote old guard is still saying, well, I did it this way, so you need to do it too. And that's just not very helpful, it turns out.
No, it really is. And as a result, Andy, as you know so well, the system still, it's evolving, but that thinking, that mentality is baked into the system.
Yeah.
Again, even our things, even our thoughts about being on call, it was considered a badge of courage, if you were on call every third night and stayed up all night and did X, Y, Z. Now, some of that's changed, but again, how residents are paid and new nurses are paid, et cetera. So I think that there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more to do.
So, John, final question of the show. We are all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth as a leader?
Yeah, I think, Andy, it gets back to the message that I said I would bring to my younger self. And that is, again, having this significant surgery a couple of weeks ago, it's really, and being at the age that I am, it's really emphasizing the need to have that balance. And again, as I alluded to, I have not always had that balance. I haven't had that balance, in my diet. I haven't had that balance in terms of my exercise. I haven't had that balance in terms of my spirituality. I haven't had that balance in a number of areas. I could keep on going on. So that's what I'm working on to try to achieve, more of an equilibrium and a, for lack of a better word, using a medical term, a homeostasis that in many times, in many instances in my career and in my life haven't existed. And so that's what I'm focused on and working on currently.
Yeah. Thank you, John. The listeners of this show, our audience, many of them are early career or even mid-career. Please, if you're in that group, do listen to John and I about the importance of striving for balance in one's life. We are creating this public good to help you get better in your career and find that appropriate sense of balance. So, John, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. My name is Andy Tempe. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good within your networks. The show is produced by Nicholas Tempe, and we will see you next time.